The Roman conquest of Jerusalem left the city razed and the Jerusalem church's foundation destroyed. Paul's Christianity, with its followers based elsewhere, was left to flourish unhindered. There was no single unified church in the beginning, but over time a dominant strand emerged. With a campaign of censorship and persecution, along with the help and influence of Roman politicians, it would determine the course of Christianity, and which texts would make it into what became the Bible, and which teachings of Jesus would be rejected.
The letters of Paul and the later fathers of the church, the writings of Irenaeus, Origen, and Plotinus, who were really condemning the Gnostics and the Gnostic teachings, started to become used to influence the formation of the New Testament books.
Irenaeus and certain others were determined to unify Christianity, and in doing that they basically started drafting what they believed in terms of Jesus and the role that he played in Christ and God and so on.
They had to decide what it was that would define Christianity. And because there was so many different views of what it was to be a Christian, there was basically this drive to have it clearly defined what was and what was not acceptable.
They denounced anyone who disagreed with them as heretical. A big turning point was in 367 AD, when the Bishop of Alexandria created the first New Testament canon, and he basically said which texts were in and which were out.
Because they weren't privy to that esoteric teaching, were unable to decipher a great deal of the Gnostic texts that they came in contact with.
The first Christian Roman Emperor, Constantine, had a huge impact on the development of Christianity. He legalized it, but with the Council of Nicaea, he also had an impact on defining what that religion would be.
Constantine then called all the bishops together and convened the Council of Nicaea.
All the bishops of the Christian faith basically came together to work out what it was that they all believed in, and was promoted by the Roman Emperor Constantine in order to have some kind of cohesion amongst the Christians.
And eventually this was voted upon, so it was literally a vote.
Under the Roman Emperor Constantine, Christianity became a legal religion in the empire. But it wasn't until Theodosius that Christianity actually became the official religion of the Roman Empire.
But he didn't favour all forms of Christianity, and there were many. Those who didn't conform to the conventional orthodox view of what Christianity should be were not given legal recognition, and in fact were banned from meeting.
Church and state became fully merged, and in doing that it's quite clear to see that it was really a way of controlling society, a political control.
With the Roman government behind them, the church gradually accepted and rejected certain texts, which led to the development of the New Testament that we have today.
The rest of the books that were written or available at the time became heretical, and a lot of them were buried and hidden.
We lost so many teachings of Jesus. Jesus' own teachings were considered heretical, the ones that didn't conform to their ideas of what the Christian religion should be. So many Gnostic texts were outlawed and lost. An example is the Nag Hammadi library. And besides the four Gospels, the only other main Gnostic text that made it into the Bible is the book of Revelation.
Under the new government-backed Christian regime, the Gnostics were considered heretics and faced repression and persecution until they were effectively wiped out.
Really, until the discovery of the Nag Hammadi library and the Gnostic Gospels, the only thing that was known to us in the modern age about the Gnostics was what was written by those people persecuting them.
It's ironic that the church itself originally was heavily persecuted by the Roman Empire, and then eventually once the church gets enough power it then becomes the persecutor.
The idea that any human being could walk any kind of spiritual path then became heretical. So the Gnostics were basically persecuted because they were teaching people that anyone can become a spiritual being.
But Gnosis did not end there. The knowledge was rediscovered and re-emerged throughout history, like an undercurrent through the ages. The teachings were concealed in legends and myths, such as the quest for the Holy Grail. Many of the later groups that emerged also faced persecution from the public, conventional form of Christianity.
Gnosis could never be stamped out completely because it's something that is beyond a particular group. It's something that exists and is a part of life, and people who seek for it find it.
One of the groups that emerged later, after the early Christian years, were the Knights Templar.
They may not have called themselves Gnostic, but since they attained that knowledge, they were Gnostic in the sense of the word.
The Knights Templar rose to power quite quickly.
They emerged in the 12th century, and although initially respected, they lost favour with the church in the 14th century.
So most of the Knights Templar were actually executed under charges of heresy, and confessions were forced from them under torture.
Those who retracted those confessions after they had been tortured were burned at the stake.
The Cathars emerged in the Middle Ages with Gnostic teachings, and their name derived from an ancient Greek word meaning perfect or perfected ones.
They were widespread throughout France and popular in Europe, and they emerged in the 11th century. They posed a real threat to the church at that time because they were very popular, and those who were part of that movement, and they included peasants right up to lords, didn't answer to the church.
And eventually this became a bit of a thorn in the Pope's side.
Pope Innocent III basically decided that the Cathars should be dealt with.
The church sent out missionaries to try and convert them. One of these was Saint Bernard, who actually said, "No sermons are more Christian than theirs, and their morals are pure."
Their message was much more practical and direct and could be seen directly lived.
When the church failed in its efforts to convert them, Pope Innocent III launched a crusade. He launched a war on the Cathars that lasted from 1209 to 1229, and in this time wiped them out, not only murdering many Cathars but much of the population of southern France.
And resulted in mass extermination of not just Cathars but also innocent women and children and even Catholics in that region.
1 to 2 million people thought to have died.
A letter from the papal legate commander records the extent of the slaughter.